Hello, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to have you with us because this is one of my favorite uh, free financial social work webinars, monthly webinars that I've ever created. So it's a behavioral framework for coping with financial stress, and we can get started. Just a few commonly asked questions so you know what to expect. The recording will come to you very soon after we finish today. If you have questions, you can definitely put them in the chat box or the question box. We do not share the slides, they are proprietary, but you do get the recording. If you have any technical issues, this uh, go to webinar support line. You can find it in the chat box. I'm Rita Wolfson. I created financial social work over 23 years ago, and I'm happy that I did. So, money, that's what we're going to talk about today. And usually, everyone has a unique response to the word and to everything having to do with finance, personal finance, money problems. So take a moment to think about how you feel about this word and what you feel in different places in your body. Money often is a topic that brings up feelings of worry and stress and anxiety, and that's exactly what we'll be talking about today. So take a deep breath in and out, and in and out, and get yourself comfortable. I'd like to begin our monthly free webinar with our financial social work affirmation because I think it really captures everything that financial social work is about. It's called Just for Today, I Will. I will love myself enough to face my fears, practice self acceptance, and embrace hope. Just for today, I will silence my inner critic, speak my truth, and make peace with my past. I will give myself permission to eliminate toxic people, beliefs, and behaviors from my life. And just for today, I will prepare for a better tomorrow by making friends with my money and with myself today. What percentage of Americans believe their finances affect their mental health? I thought that was a good question to begin with today. When I saw this statistic that overall 37% of people believe their finances affect their mental health, I personally think that the number is much higher. And until recently, I think it was something that wasn't, that connection between money and mental health was not really recognized. But as we move forward in this very uncertain time of COVID-19, I think there will be more and more acceptance and understanding of that relationship. Speaking of COVID-19, this is pulled from the latest headlines. 1 in 7 Americans wouldn't seek coronavirus treatment because it probably costs too much. Workers are more concerned about their finances than their health. And from NPR, half of Americans financially affected by coronavirus. That was from the end of April, and I would say that it's more than half of Americans as we move into past the first week of May. So financial wellness is a critical component of holistic well-being, but many Americans find that it is a primary source of frustration, anxiety, and stress. Money is the number one stressor in the United States. 90% of individuals say that money has an impact on their stress levels, and half of individuals feel unable to control important financial aspects of their lives. So we start to understand why there's so much worry, stress, and anxiety around money. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here on these particular statistics. I do like to include some statistics because I think it captures where we are in this country around issues of money and how they affect Americans. So I'd like you to know a little bit about financial social work. We did have a wonderfully large registration for this webinar, and we know that that means there's a lot of people who aren't familiar with our work and may not understand why we do a free webinar every month. Financial social work is an interactive, introspective behavioral model. It incorporates financial engagement, education, motivation, validation, and support that leads to hope, help, healing, and wellness. Works individually or with groups. And it is very strengths-based. We look at the relationship each of us has with our money and with ourselves, because that's what drives our financial behavior, which is how we earn, spend, save, share, and borrow. And it is our financial behavior that determines our financial circumstances, which my little dancing arrow shows you. That is where financial behavioral change happens. So financial social work goes beyond the dollar, cents, debt, and budgets. It explores the fundamentals of financial well-being, and that's the psychosocial component of thoughts, feelings, attitudes, and beliefs. And that's a part of this whole process because that's what drives our financial behavior, how we earn, spend, save, share, and borrow. And we call this our whole person financial health model. And let me show you why. It is because, as I just mentioned, for sure, that there's so much more involved than dollars, cents, debt, and budget. Money is a source of all these different thoughts, feelings, and attitudes. And for various reasons, it makes it difficult to talk about, understand, or manage money for so many people. The relationship we have with ourselves is about the most important relationship we'll ever have. And it is very impactful on our relationship with money. And this is the behavioral model, which we will continue to explore through the rest of this webinar. We need to understand how the other people in our lives, our family, friends, colleagues, partners, spouses, and others influence our financial decisions directly and indirectly. And the fact that we live in a society that is constantly delivering a message of buy, buy, buy. We need to know that what's good for the economy is very often not good for the consumer. And within the life cycle, there are financial tasks intended to be completed, and the financial expectation is that they be met, even when we or clients are unprepared to meet them. And health. Financial stress, anxiety, and worry is detrimental to the physical, mental, emotional, psychological, and social well-being of everyone. So financial social work at its heart is about making peace with your money. So we do live in very uncertain times, as I'm sure everyone attending this webinar understands. And the problem with that, the challenge is how very traumatic that is. Not only are so many Americans living with the fear of getting the virus, they're also living with the uncertainty and reality and trauma of the COVID-19 financial crisis, which runs right along with the virus. People who experience trauma are at much higher risk for other problems such as alcoholism, drugs, depression, absenteeism, all kinds of other problems, with the most serious and concerning to me is the potential for suicide. We need to be aware of this as we move forward in the coming days, weeks, months, and I hope not years of this pandemic. So this webinar is on a behavioral framework for coping with financial stress. This means understanding the need to change our relationship with our money is part of that framework. Change the relationship with ourselves, because unhealthy relationships of any kind with food, substances, or money result from an unhealthy relationship with self. And if we don't feel good about ourselves, we're not likely to make the time or take the steps to improve our financial health. It is about changing our thinking about money. Are those thoughts we have positive? Are they negative? Are they helpful? Are they harmful? And most of all, it is about changing our financial behavior. So the process looks like this. Changing that relationship with money is about recognizing, embracing, and taking ownership of your personal financial health. It is about changing our relationship with self. That means self-discovery, self-care, self-healing, that thinking, those thoughts, feelings, attitudes, and beliefs we hold, and the behavior, how we earn, spend, save, share, and borrow. It is an interactive, reflective, and strength-based process. It is client-centered, empowering, sustainable change. It looks like this. We begin at the top. All change begins with recognition of a need. We know that something is wrong and needs to be addressed. The first step in change is making the commitment. It all begins with commitment. And from commitment, we then have the opportunity to gain the knowledge and the skills to contribute to change and achieve it. It's about learning from the past and preparing for the future. There are definitely and always lessons to be learned from the past. We want to learn them so we can be healthier in the present and have those lessons to prepare for the future. We don't want to try to live in the future or focus exclusively on the future because we can't control it, and that will only contribute to higher levels of financial worry, stress, and anxiety. There will be setbacks. There are always setbacks. And when we prepare for them, we are much more likely to be able to cope with them and to be successful. Moving in to the center, we have the issue of staying connected. We want to stay connected to our commitment and to all the things we are learning about to help us create sustainable long-term financial behavior change. We want to maintain motivation, consider sharing the journey with someone on his or her own journey, whether it's around personal finance or in some other area, but someone who will be supportive. It takes time. We need to allow time. Financial problems don't happen overnight, and they don't disappear overnight, but they do improve over time. So it is very important to trust the process. This model is part of the financial social work philosophy and certainly of our certification, and it absolutely does work. So factors that influence financial behavior. There are quite a few. We're just going to go through some of them. Family plays a critical role in how we think about, how we think and feel, what we believe about money. So does gender. The belief still remains that girls aren't good at math and that boys are. So as we go through this list of factors that influence financial behavior, by all means, think about where and how these different factors impact you in your life. We have age, generation, and lifestyle. Very important, because baby boomers aren't going to look and think about money in the same way that a Gen X or Gen Y person does. Marital status, I probably don't have to talk much about how much that affects financial behavior. Our financial experiences. If we've been through a bankruptcy, a foreclosure, or won the lottery, if we've lost our job, all of these are definitely going to impact our relationship with our money and how we feel about ourselves. Religion and culture. So much of these pieces are connected to our financial lives. Society, who we are, where we live, who we know, what we do. These are very influential on our beliefs and thoughts and feelings about money. Do we have health insurance? If you recall, I started with a headline that said, I believe 1 out of 7 people would not go for medical attention if they thought they had the virus because they couldn't afford it. Our health plays a very important part in our financial behavior. If we have insurance, we may be able to take care of ourselves. With so many millions out of work and losing their insurance, that's going to continue to be a major influence on the lives of so many Americans. Our relationships, our financial beliefs, thoughts, feelings, those all will determine our relationship with others and others' relationships with us, and our relationship with our money and with ourselves. And the economy. The economy, the economy, the economy. It plays a real role. We went from what was being described as the best economy in forever to possibly the worst economy of a lifetime. That's one headline that I did read. So all of these are factors that influence our financial behavior and others' financial behavior. And of course, that means that they influence a large part of our lives. And certainly they are not the only things that influence financial behavior. So what about the role of politics and the economy on financial health? Well, we definitely have rising credit card debt. We had it before COVID. It was at the end of 2018 when credit card debt reached its highest level ever, which is definitely not a good thing. I do know that since the virus pandemic, some credit card companies are lowering the maximums on credit cards which is going to be harmful to people who don't understand that that is happening and are spending on their cards and maxing them out. We definitely have rising food prices. You're probably aware of the fact that so many meat and poultry factories are among the true hotspots with COVID, and that means that they are not, some of them are closed and some of them are only functioning partially. And so while they say there is no shortage in the food chain, there is a shortage of meat and poultry, and uh, some supermarkets are limiting how much a consumer can purchase at one time. And of course, it is raising the cost of those products. We do have or had a part time economy, a gig economy with a lot of underemployment. And unfortunately, as with so many other things right now, a lot of that work is disappearing. So you can see how politics and the economy play such a significant role on financial health. Predatory lending is a huge problem. It's always been a huge problem and will continue to be, particularly as people um, are unable to get loans or use credit cards that are maxed out. And you can see that the fees for a payday loan are usually a percentage of the amount borrowed. And when that loan extends or rolls over, which is usually the case, those rates can really go higher than 390% up to and beyond 900%. So payday loans are not a good thing. We have growing homelessness. We certainly had tremendous homelessness before COVID, and it is likely that it will unfortunately continue to grow. Food insecurity. There are lines today around the country that are miles long at the food banks because people don't have money for food. It is a rather dire situation. Identity theft, while we may not consider that a priority at this current time, it is a very serious problem. And before continuing, I just want to mention that child identity theft is a growing concern that you might want to think about if you have young children. I probably don't have to talk very much about student loans and tuition hikes other than to say that it's looking like some colleges and universities won't survive the pandemic, and many are already committing to not opening in the fall. But education costs are a huge burden to many families. Then we have healthcare costs. And it's another thing we probably don't have to say a whole lot of, but that I wanted to point out as the role that it plays in politics and from politics and the economy, and the desire to eliminate Obamacare. Then we have stagnant wages, and we do know, I am so sorry, but I seem to be coughing. Took a quick drink there. With so many people out of work and laid off, and a lot of people have found that their salaries have been reduced 20 to 30%, which for some people they consider that better than not having any job at all. And I had to add this because COVID-19 is here. It's probably going to be with us for a very long time. And everything above it on this list will be influenced. And that won't be a positive influence, is likely to be a very negative influence. So, as we talk about how we're going to help you deal with the financial worry, stress, and anxiety, we put together the Waze Effect. Of course, obviously, for worry, stress, and anxiety. And it all begins with worry. And that's where we'd like to reduce, if we can reduce or eliminate some of the worrisome pieces, then we have the opportunity to minimize the stress and the anxiety. And the process kind of looks like this. Someone feels and thinks and believes they are financially lacking, not just in income, but especially in knowledge. We continue to raise financially illiterate generations of men and women because we don't teach financial education, financial health, financial literacy in our schools. And so many parents and families don't feel competent or confident about teaching their children about money. So we start with these very negative thoughts, feelings, attitudes, and beliefs. And that next step is it drives us to avoid anything having to do with money and to disconnect from our money, which is easy enough. We don't see our money, the dollars, the cents. We don't then have to open our bills. And if we don't have the money to pay them, we kind of spiral down in this process. And the overwhelming negativity of distancing ourselves from our money leads to physical, mental, and emotional problems, and to the financial Waze Effect: worry, stress, and anxiety. Financial worry, stress, and anxiety. So let's take a look at financial worry. It happens in our mind, not our body. And it comes from so much negative thinking. We focus more on the things that could go wrong and on all of the uncertainties of life, let alone COVID. And it is a cognitive component of anxiety. There is limited potential for it to create change, but there is some potential. But it becomes harmful when it grows obsessive. And I particularly wanted to share this graphic because I think it really captures how much worrying we do and how small a percentage of those worries and fears actually happen, or the focus on the things that could happen, and then how minuscule is that piece that does eventually happen. So financial worrying isn't helpful. It doesn't demonstrate caring, and it isn't a positive personality trait. Some people think that it is a positive way. They actually have some fantasy that by worrying about everything, they can prevent bad things from happening. So let's take a look at what that looks like around COVID. This is called a worry chain. So I have a headache, or actually, you've heard me coughing, so I could say, what if it's the virus? Wow, maybe I passed it on to everyone at work today. Of course, none of us is at work, but maybe someone in the family or in the house where you're living. And then that worry that, oh, everyone else that I pass that on to could die. And then everyone I know and love will be gone. So this worry chain is not helpful. And we just need to break it. And the earlier we're able to break it, the better off we're going to be. So we do have all kinds of strategies for you before we end the webinar, but I particularly like this Zen flow chart, which begins with, do you have a problem in your life? If you don't, then you don't need to worry. If you do, is it something that you can do something about? And if it's not, then you don't need to worry. If it is, you actually don't need to worry either, because you probably can't do something in the form of following through on that worry. So that was a little bit about worry. So now we're going to dig in deeper to the Waze effect and look at stress. Stress is a normal biological response to an external event. The stressor, a reaction to environmental changes and forces that are beyond our own or our clients' coping resources. So stress activates the brain and body to deal with the threat. And we experience a rapid heart rate, clammy palms, and shallow breath. You can see some other symptoms here with stomach problems, anger, headaches, apathy, teeth grinding. Lots of things result from stress in the body, in our emotions, in our mind, and in our behavior. And each of those is going to affect us in some way, shape, or form. Stress is not really our friend because it drives anxiety. So now we'll look at the anxiety piece. So we start with worry, we move to stress, and then we move up to anxiety, which is experienced in both the mind and the body. It is a natural response to a threat, but it's a response without the actual threat, kind of a false alarm. And that's why anxiety becomes so problematic. It is an outcome of stress and worry. Worry is the cognitive element. Stress is the physiological response. And it happens when dealing with an overload of stress and worry. So you can see worry is the thinking part, stress is the fight or flight response, and anxiety is the feeling part. Did you know that anxiety is contagious? You see this woman collecting all the toilet paper? Take a second, which is called social contagion. Take a second and ask yourself if you've seen that in the store recently, and if you've felt the need to go and look for paper towels or toilet paper or hand wipes as a result. I'll be honest with you, I have. Okay, so anxiety grows out of control. It becomes panic, sudden, uncontrollable fear or anxiety. Worry happens in your mind, stress happens in your body, anxiety happens in your mind and your body. Right now, I'm not specifically tying this to the specifics of money, but I will a little later. But you also should understand that it all is directly correlated with financial problems and issues. And you can see how to recognize anxiety in yourself and in others. And there's many different ways here. I thought it was a graphic worth showing. So then let's look at financial stress. When you're financially stressed, you're less likely to save, less likely to budget, less likely to pay bills on time, less likely perhaps to even open your bills. You're more likely to increase debt, more likely to spend impulsively, more likely to take off time from work, either to deal with your financial problems or because you're just not able to cope with them, and more likely to have relationship problems. And of course, the list for less likely and more likely could go on and on and on. Financial stress is a major trigger for other mental health problems, such as anxiety and depression, because people suffering from financial stress are 3 times more likely to experience panic attacks, 4 times more likely to suffer from suicidal thoughts and depression. And I mentioned that the suicidal component has me greatly concerned. And you're much more likely to miss a month time of work productivity annually. So 87 million Americans are worried about their credit scores. 58 million Americans are worried about paying their mortgage or rent during the pandemic. 46 million are worried about paying their credit card bill. One thing I will take a moment to point out to you is to try to make sure that you and your clients understand that while there are many ways that companies are trying to help consumers, you need to understand what that will look like if and when this pandemic ends, or when these companies decide that it's time for them to be paid for all of the support they had offered, the delayed payments through the pandemic. 86% of people think that credit scores should ignore any missed payments during the coronavirus pandemic. Now, some of those are likely to be ignored, but some of them will not be and will cause problems. And women are 21% more likely than men to expect to get into more debt because of the virus. So signs of Waze Effect: frugality, overspending, ignoring all things financial, blaming all problems on money, increasingly arguing about money, believing the rich are different and we wouldn't want to be that way, so we don't want to have financial stability or security, which allows us to avoid all things financial, allowing others to handle our finances, being more and more depressed or anxious about money, giving money to adult children, relatives, friends. Although I did read a headline that with so many people out of work and losing money, that there is less money for parents to help children with. Refusing to change financial behaviors, which are clearly causing them personal and work problems. So those were signs of the Waze Effect. So let's just briefly review this framework for coping with financial stress. I showed you the financial social work, financial behavioral change model. It's real, it's helpful, it's worth knowing about. Remember that the framework talks about and addresses changing your relationship with money, changing your relationship with yourself, changing your thinking about money, and changing your financial behavior. It's about recognizing, embracing, and taking ownership of your personal financial health. It's about self-discovery, self-care, and self-healing. And you've heard me say it numerous times today, It's about the thoughts, feelings, attitudes, and beliefs you have about money because they drive how you earn, spend, save, share, and borrow. In many ways, I've devoted many years to developing this concept, this process. It sounds simplistic. I absolutely know it is not, but love to be able to present it in a way that can help you in your life and in your work with your clients. And so finally, we promised you 12 behavioral change strategies to help clients cope with the financial Waze effect. However, we actually have an extra few for you. I do believe we have 15. So number one is one of the more basic ones, which means you need to get active and you need to sleep. These are very important to eliminating financial worry, stress, and anxiety. Need to reduce and eliminate stimulants such as sugar, caffeine, and alcohol because they physiologically impact anxiety in a negative way. Now we get to some not quite as well known. It's about knowing what is and isn't controllable. Although, if you remember one of the slides I had about asking yourself, do you have a problem? Here, it's about knowing if you have a problem, is it controllable? There are so many things in our lives that aren't controllable, but paying our bills or talking to the people we owe to explain why we're unable to pay our bills. Let's look for the things we can control and not allow the things we are unable to control to cause us financial worry, stress, and anxiety. Distract and refocus. If we spend all our time worrying and stressing over money, we're just going to be caught up in a very unhealthy cycle of behavior. We need to think back to a time when we did achieve something positive and remember what that felt like and how we accomplished it. And then we can refocus on those steps rather than allowing all the uncertainty in life to control us. Schedule time for worry. This is one of my favorites. Rather than allowing ourselves to worry day and night about our finances, schedule time for worry. Make it when it's convenient for you. Is it 7 o'clock in the evening? Is it 11 o'clock in the morning? And how much time should you allow for worry? 30 minutes? 45 minutes? Give yourself a time to worry and a period of time in which to worry, and only allow yourself to worry at that time and period. Keep a worry journal. Write down your worries. Get them out of your head and onto paper. I'm a big believer in the value of all types of journaling, but certainly keeping a worry journal can be very, very helpful when trying to control financial worrying, stress, and anxiety. Keep a worry jar. Write down your different worries, put them in the jar, and once a month, take them out, review them, see if they're still worth worrying about. Or maybe it's time to get rid of them. Stay present. Earlier, I spoke about learning from the past. There's a lot to learn from the past, and we're not going to let go of that until we really spend time learning those lessons. And those lessons have much to help us to be healthier in the present. But don't allow yourself to focus exclusively on the future. We don't know what the future holds, particularly around the COVID pandemic. So let's stay present and stay positive. What are your financial stressors? Take a moment to write them down. Well, identify them and then write them down. Once you know them, you have the opportunity to avoid them, to reduce them, or eliminate them. Don't allow your financial stressors to take over your life. Let go of the shame, the blame, and the guilt that comes with financial problems. They're very well known, they're very real, and they serve no purpose. Let's let go. I'm not saying that it's easy or simple, but if you pay attention to letting go, you can do this. It may take time, but it's a very worthwhile investment. Take self-care seriously, very seriously. The self-care movement has been around for at least a decade, and yet so many people do not practice any form of self-care. And the more we take care of ourselves, the less likely we are to struggle with overwhelming financial worry, stress, and anxiety. Write down, what does self-care look like for you in your life? It certainly doesn't have to equate to a massage or yoga or a bubble bath, although if that's what works for you, that could certainly be part of it. But perhaps spending time with your money could be self-care. Paying your bills, talking to your creditors. Take care of yourself for greater financial stability and health. Use apps. There are some wonderful financial apps. I really didn't want to give a specific list, but just in case you're thinking about the need to have a budget, I would, from experience, highly recommend the app You Need a Budget, YNAP, or AB, YNAB. I've worked with clients whose lives have been changed from that, but there's also Mint. There are certainly some terrific savings apps, and that could be a part of your financial self-care for sure. 13, tip a toe. You don't have to do all of the things discussed, and neither do your clients, of course, in this webinar. Just pick one and then pick two, but tip a toe into this process of financial healing. Here's one: do nothing. It's definitely a form of self-care. Instead of trying to do everything and being unable to get it all done, try doing nothing. Sit quietly. You don't have to meditate. You don't have to do anything other than take some time for yourself and think about what's good in your life, what you're grateful for, and what you can make better. And finally, this is 15, so we had 3 over the 12 I promised you. Incorporate the determinants of health, social determinants of health. They're very important and can be very helpful in dealing with financial behavioral change. Also, register for our 2 upcoming webinars. Each month we add the next month to the list. In June, just a little over a month from now, we'll be looking at chronic traumatic debt disorder. And in July, we have a guest speaker on emergency funds, the adult security blanket. I want to remind you, in case you didn't know or haven't downloaded, the Financial Reality Coping Guide for COVID-19 and beyond. It is available for a free download on our website. And we do know that most client populations today, now more than ever, need our model of financial engagement, education, motivation, and support to survive this crisis and improve their financial future. Our financial social work certification is 5 workbooks. It includes 20 CEUs, and our graduates may use all the original materials with their clients. It is a self-study and self-paced program that our students have 6 months to complete and has an online exam that also is an open book exam, and our students have 2 weeks to finish. We also are beginning a monthly group for our students and graduates, which we're very excited about, and we can tell you more about next month. So, in closing, I'd like to thank all of you for being here today and tell you that I hope you will use this important framework in your own work and to help your clients and anyone else who can use that help. We hope to see you back here next month. Thanks so much and enjoy the rest of your day.